are back and we're moving into our first conversation for this morning as we get the details of Belize's digital agenda. And the last time you were here, Minister, you teased that this was coming, and now we get to understand more of the details. We have with us on set Honorable Kevin Bernard, who is the Minister of Youth, Sports and E-Governance. And we're also joined by Alexa Peralta, who is the Director of the E-Governance Unit. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having us.
All right. Well, I'm happy to have you here because I think we saw the launch take place last week, and it definitely is a pivotal moment. But being able to say we're going digital and actually transitioning to digital, two different things.
Yes.
So let's just talk about the preparation that has gone into getting us to this point of the launch.
Well, let me first of all start off, Marlene and Paul, and thank you all for having us. Yes, in saying that the commitment in moving Belize government into a more digital era and a digital platform and transitioning our public service especially into that digital agenda that we have set out, it was very critical for us. We felt that, and the mandate by the Prime Minister from the very beginning that he's created this ministry and gave us the mandate to say, you know what, we need to transform our services, we need to go digital, we need to be able to ensure that residents across this country have access, we need to ensure that the investment climate is conducive and the ease of doing business is improved in Belize. And this is some of the main reasons why we had to push as well to ensure that this is done. Yeah. But I know in terms of the preparation, as you're aware, when I came here the last time, we were speaking about the legislations that were passed, the slew of legislation that were passed, 5 major legislation that ties in to the entire digital agenda and making the ease of doing business in Belize and ensuring that there's a use of technology and the benefits of using, and of course, with all that comes the protection of your data, cyber security, and all that. So our agenda took a while. It took about 6 months for us to really come up, and I know Director Peralta will speak on the process that was taking place all along with our unit. Our unit was developed a few months after the ministry was formed with a small team, but I must say that a very efficient and effective team of employees at the e-governance unit headed by Ms. Peralta here. And I want to thank them personally, and I keep saying this because with the limited resources we have, Marlene, at this time, because as you know, when the unit was formed, we had a budget, of course, but the Prime Minister and the Minister of State and Minister of Finance said, well, we need to start, but we need to start at X amount for now. But we will get where you need to get. So they took the ball running, and this is where we are today. And I'm sure Alexa can add.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you so much, Minister. And I agree that it's been a lengthy process, but it's been lengthy because building a country's first national digital agenda is a very vital pillar. We really needed to understand what were the citizens' demands, but also what were the challenges that they would face when we begin in this transition. Because overall, digital agendas are not about just adopting technology. It's about how you're going to utilize that technology to transform people's lives. So we needed to understand where we were in the different elements of digital government. So it required a lot of dialogue, a lot of conversations with the public sector, the different ministries, to understand what is the ministry's maturity as well, for them to be able to adopt technology, for them to be able to utilize it and start to doing their works differently. We did a survey actually as well with the Statistical Institute of Belize to try to map out and understand what were citizens' demands. And we actually did that with the labor force survey in April. That's how early we began this process in just collecting information, analyzing the data, to then begin to determine how do we try to address these concerns. We also did a second survey with a local researcher, actually, again with SIB, to then try to understand what would be the challenges, the cultures, the behavior of citizens in wanting to adopt e-governance and wanting to transform along with us. Because a key thing in this transformation process is people. and understanding their cultures, their behaviors, their perception, and how we can begin to address some of those issues so that resistance is minimized, because resistance is what really makes the process longer, and that's all part of the change management that has to come along with that digital transformation. From that, we develop projects. So it's been extremely lengthy, as the minister said, over a little bit 6 months, just to ensure that the agenda really speaks to all elements in setting that foundation for government, in transforming itself, but even transforming our citizens' lives.
So let's talk about why. And it seems like a easy answer, but one of the things that I know, especially the private sector, has talked about for a long time, is the complaint from local and international investors about the ease of doing business in Belize. And part of the proposal has always been, let's switch to an e-governance system. So the idea of driving to Belmopan, coming back a week later, being told it's not ready, coming back for whatever process is necessary, is time consuming and costly. So that's one element. But let's talk about how this affects Belizeans. Why is this shift to a digital space necessary for us as people who live here?
Well, for me, it's very critical to understand, to point out, Marlene, that Belizeans, as you all know, we're a very small nation, and we're in a unique position in Belize. Just recently at the investment summit that the Prime Minister had in San Pedro, and I was there to participate, a lot of the investors that I got in contact with there too, both local and foreign investors, express the same thing, that it has been very bureaucratic, cumbersome, and long processes that people have to go through to get things done in Belize. But for our citizens, how does this benefit our citizens as well? Let us use the simple example, and I think we discussed this briefly when when the legislations that were passed. Vital statistics is one of the critical areas that we are talking about in terms of people being able to apply for their birth paper or their death, or somebody's death certificate or their marriage certificate. You should be able to do this from the palm of your hands, on your tablet, on your phone, on your laptop. That's where we want to go. That's what we want to see. People's lives improve through those access to services that are more efficient and more reliable, other than having people wait for days or weeks, or driving all the way from Punta Gorda, and then when you reach here, you still can't get the service. That's one aspect. Another area that people use a lot, citizens that use a lot, every time they're applying for a job somewhere, they need to apply for a police record. So that's another area we are looking at. We're working with the Ministry of Home Affairs to see how we can digitize their services in terms of that. Our land registry, the lands department. I mean, the Deputy Prime Minister is very committed in ensuring that is also done. Businesses, investors, when they come and buy in a land and develop, they don't want to have to wait a whole year just to get a document, because it delays their investment. So these are things that we are talking about. Even the regular Belizeans that get a piece of land and need to go and you buy a land, you want your title to be able to reinvest that money, that land into maybe building your house or so forth. Again, the process it takes, we need to improve those. I know the company registry.
I just wanted to jump in for a moment to ask out of curiosity. From your assessment, what is the least efficient process that you've found that's still pen and paper?
I think vital statistics is one of them.
I've also heard stories of port and maintenance too.
I mean, if you're talking about high value, high impact areas, of course, vital statistics comes as the number one highlighted by the citizens. But besides, like the minister said, police records, and that's simply because everything we do now, when we try to be part of the economy, we need to have a police record. So those are the two, and that one is specifically very manual, to the point that we have seen it, where people have to go physically stand in a line.
Yes.
So it's
Right.
it's one of
But
the
is it,
top
I
priority
mean,
areas.
it's drawn up from a database, or are we searching through books? What's
Still-
this long?
It's both
yeah.
actually. They
Both.
they search books as well as they search a database, because the database only has information up to a certain point in time. And that's one of the main challenges in most ministries. A lot of the data that existed from since our independence is still
On paper.
books
Yeah.
and paper. So it requires someone to manually go and check to verify all of that information, and that is what becomes very lengthy.
I would imagine, just on that, I would imagine that going digital would mean that someone would also have to go into those papers and books and input
Yes.
these
You
data.
you touched right where I was going to say. But what we want to also do at the same time, because these things can be done simultaneously as you
Yes.
develop your system, because that doesn't mean that tomorrow Vital Statistics we launch a online platform
And
that means
everything
that
is
everything
there.
is digital right
Right.
away.
Yes.
But we want to be able to assure that you, Marlene, can apply for your birth certificate online, and then behind the scenes somebody is working those processes
Yeah.
until we can get to that full end-to-end solution, what we call from the very beginning to the, and even making payment online, which I know Alexa will touch on as well. But for Vital Statistics, which is critical for us, we feel that that's where a lot of Belizean people, in fact nearly everybody, need access to that service one day or the other.
Yeah.
And so for us it was important to us to highlight this. And the Prime Minister is also very much committed in terms of making sure every time we talk about that, that's the first thing he brings in. Vital Statistics, our
Yeah.
land registry. I was just pointing out that the company registry, they are already
They have digitized
so
all their
that they are,
records.
I think, far ahead.
I'm glad you said that, because 3 systems come to mind, well, 4 technically. The BHIS system, the health system that
Right.
that records
Health
patient and
information.
health information who have been through the public system. That's one. We have the recently launched IRIS as
Right,
well.
that's
Yep.
right.
We have, I know the labor
Labor
ministry is
temporary
working
employment.
with their stuff as well. And there's a 4th one now that escapes me. That
tax.
tax. Yes, tax as well.
Oh, taxes, yeah. Then.
But it's also showing that there are some moves being made. How do you fit this under one agenda so that it doesn't become, Vital Statistics is using one process, health is using another process, maybe immigration will use another process. How do we make sure that they're all coordinated and
Yeah.
synchronized?
Before Alexa gets, because I know that's from her angle, but I think the key aspect of this is the setting up of this ministry and this unit that will be the coordinating body, basically supporting the ministries and the various departments in making sure that their digital transformation
Yeah.
falls within the standards that are set out within the agenda, and that everybody is speaking with each other. At the end of the day, we need interoperability between all systems.
Yeah.
Because if we are going to invest in having everybody have their own thing, it's going to be costly. So we have to find ways that is cost effective, but at the same time that everybody can communicate with each other with the protection of their data and the citizens' rights at the same time.
Yeah. So just to add to what the minister has said, certainly one of the missing elements was that standardization across ministries, which is now 2 major projects, actually 3 major projects in the National Digital Agenda. One of them is now standardizing ICT development in government. So how do we develop websites, systems? How do we ensure that regardless of which ministry develops it, that there is that ability for that connectivity and for the ease for the citizen? But besides that, what we're doing is we're going to map every single process, and we're now going to define how we're going to change those processes, how we're going to re-engineer the processes. Because again, we need to also think about when a citizen is interacting with government, it must feel like you're interacting with one government. It's not interacting with multiple different governments, because we're only arms of that government. So it's changing that. It's even rebranding how government operates as well. And then, of course, having one e-services portal, one single window where all citizens go and access all services. So instead of
Okay.
having to go to
So you have
multiple
a drop-down list
different
of different
correct,
ministries.
correct,
Right.
correct. That is the, I would say, one of the major programs under the National Digital Agenda, which will begin to design next year to ensure that all services are now onboarded onto this one service portal, and they're all, like I said, makes you and gives you that feeling of, okay, I'm interacting with the government of Belize.
Yeah. Now, the Minister of Public Service was also
Right.
a big part of the launch, because clearly it's the public servants who will be executing these plans. And let's talk about that, because the point I think that Paul brought up and that you emphasized is that very often you could get stuck with, like, there's so much information to input and you're fearful of starting. What are the tools that the public service will be equipped with? I'd imagine connectivity is one, reliable equipment, security, and most importantly, the skill sets that are necessary.
Yeah.
What's the plan in being able to equip the public service to carry out this digital transformation?
So
You want
the
to- yeah.
yes, so the digital agenda speaks first and foremost to digital skills.
Yeah.
In developing our unit with the Ministry of Public Services, developing a digital skills strategy and training plan for the next 4 years, where we will begin to upskill all public officers from the basics of digital skills in just using Excel, Word, PowerPoint, etc., and starting to upskill them all the way to advanced level IT skills like cybersecurity, data protection, etc. So looking at what all as a ecosystem the government needs to have in skills to be able to operate, that's one way. But apart from that, is also making these tools accessible, as you rightfully said. And one of the things, for example, is having access to that government email. Believe it or not everyone in government is on that government network and that government email. So being able to onboard public officers then gives them access to these services, gives them access to PowerPoint, gives them access to Word, gives them access to Excel. We're also looking right now at other tools such as DocuSign and Adobe Sign that allows then people to sign electronically these documents. They're very expensive, I might add, but when you think about the investment and when you think about the returns from that investment, it's massive.
But
So
if it's a collective experience,
Correct.
one
Right, yes.
subscription
That's
can
correct.
work
Yes.
for all.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we're looking at even how do we begin to utilize tools that we have right now, like Microsoft Teams, to be able to do trainings, to be able to do meetings with external partners. There's so much in truth in regards to tool sets that are available today that can be utilized that we're heavily looking at. And government already has a partnership with Microsoft. So we're looking at from that partnership, what other tools can we begin to utilize from them?
What's the link with CETO, the other technology unit
Yeah.
that was established before? Because security is going to be the most important or one of the critical elements in this plan.
Well, CETO role in government is really the IT arm for the Ministry of Finance. But CETO is also going to be like, for example, as we call it, our government cloud, where they will host, because they have all the major servers,
Yes.
and they are already hosting several ministries' data there. But of course, you talk about cybersecurity, and there's a cybersecurity framework that also has to be looked at in terms of how we're going to ensure that is strengthened. The legislation is there. I think there's a legislation that's on cybercrime that already exists. But our e-governance unit also will play a very critical role in ensuring that is done. But maybe Alexia, you could add on what has been the discussion in terms of between CETO and e-governance unit as it relates to that aspect of things.
Well, actually, I would say it's even beyond just the two of our units, because when you
Right.
talk about the security of people's information, the security of systems, it's really a collaborative effort that also includes the Ministry of Home Affairs and New Growth Industries
Right.
as the primary ministry who is charged with the execution of that cybersecurity strategy and that Cybercrime Act. It also involves the judiciary, because if we're talking about these crimes and how do we prosecute those crimes, then it also includes the judiciary. It includes the police department. Includes CETO in the sense of the infrastructure. How do we protect our infrastructure? But we also include the telecommunication providers because we need to protect our critical infrastructures like electricity, water. Because what we need to think about when we talk about cyber attacks, they're not just coming sometimes for specific data. Everything, they look at what is really and truly, where are your weak areas and where can they target. And it's becoming far much more advanced now when we talk about cyber attacks. It's been a lengthy discussion among all our partners. But CETO right now, the way we see it is they're our sister unit or sister arm who we work together with to ensure that systems can be deployed effectively, that the infrastructure is there to support all of these services. Because what we're doing is we're trying to rapidly, really and truly bring the government, as some ministers have said, into the 21st century. So the infrastructure, the building blocks must be put in place to do so.
When we think about the decades-old system of doing things paper-based, one may think that there may be some reluctance, especially from well-established public officers who probably got into the service doing this former paper-based service. Do you find that there is reluctance? I know that among the younger population, they may be more open and welcome to this. And also I think about education and how now the approach in the schools may change to equip from a young age in preparation for the digital wave in the public service.
Well, you have two major important things you mentioned there. And in terms of the public service, we are very much aware of this, and our department, our ministry, as we moved around from ministry to ministry, speaking to key partners in the ministers and CEOs and some of the technical people in those ministries, we note that that there is that culture that exists that we have to break as well. We have to break that silo, as we are saying, not only from the public servants, but including everybody. It's not about turf. It's not about. It's about working together in achieving this digital transformation for Belize, for the benefit of our citizens. And yes, there will be a lot of training that has to take place. Alexia pointed out some of the things but it goes beyond that. Constant training within the public service, making sure people's skills are brought up to speed. We don't want people to feel that transforming digitally will taking away their jobs. And so we want to ease that fear from public servants, that we are here to complement your work. We are here to make your work easier, but at the end of the day, we as public servants are there to serve our people, the citizens who expect us to give them efficient service. And that is what the end goal is. And when you talk about including the education system, I mean, our conversation with the Minister of Education, when we met with him, awesome. You know, his STEM program the STEM school that they are bringing in on board. Again, they have a very, and speaking to Dr. Zabane as well, I had a discussion with him. You know, they are on board, fully on board. They know where we need to go within the education system in terms of moving digital transformation, utilizing technology, making sure that young people also doesn't lose focus on it, but for what the purpose is. So I think that we are on the right track, Paul. And what I want to say, though, that from speaking to all our cabinet colleagues, there is great buy-in, there is great support and full support for this digital agenda. And I think that is what makes it even more important, that every minister, every CEO in these ministries want to see improvement in their own ministries, how they provide service to citizens. And at the end of the day, it makes the life of our unit more easier to ensure that we can start to get these things into place.
So, with using the example of education and the lessons learned with schooling during the pandemic, you know, there is a digital divide in terms of
Yeah.
accessibility. And I do want to ensure that I emphasize the point that not because a community has access to internet means they have access to a digital space.
Right.
Sometimes they may or may not have a device or sufficient device, or they may not be able to pay for data,
Yeah.
or literally not know how to use what is there. So if we use that as an example, we know that there's some catch-up that has to
That's
happen for the public as well. Let's go back to when the U.S. Embassy did their Visa Online program. There were businesses that popped up to help people
Right, yes,
learn how
yes.
to fill out the forms. Will there be a public education campaign to go along with it so that
Yes.
people who are scared of sitting in front of a computer and putting in personal information, that they will come to that comfort level as well?
I want to say that apart from the public campaign that has to, education campaign that has to happen, we are already, in fact, looking at many ways. And in the agenda, you will see the setting up of digital labs, because you made a very important point, especially in our rural communities. And we have a pilot project that starts with 5 digital labs in some rural communities. We were able to get this through the support of the Taiwanese embassy and Taiwanese government. And the idea of this, Marlene, and how I foresee it, was that we set up these digital labs in the communities, working together with the village councils. One, because they already have the community centers, is to make sure that through our Department of Youth Services, we are able to then provide constant training at these labs to make sure that people within these communities are trained, and that at the end you have somebody there that can assist their own communities, residents in those communities, in utilizing the service, accessing the service. But at this, because you made a very important point, not everybody, not because there's internet there, mean that person has access to a gadget or a device that they are able to use, or it could be vice versa. And so government also is looking at, and the Prime Minister pointed it out in one of his interview, that they are working along with our major, which is BTL, in terms of, BTL owes the government a lot of money. So instead of them writing a check, let us ensure that services are expanded, especially in these far rural communities that need access to services. And so that will also be a critical component of making sure that this digital agenda is successful, the digital transformation in Belize is successful. And so we have to do that. We have to partner with various places in terms of the village councils, in terms of the community hubs that are set up in different areas. We can tap into those places and see where they can also help to provide some of these access to the services and training that has to happen.
Is there a possibility for a link within your 2 ministries when you look at youth centers?
Yes.
The Department of Youth and also e-governance?
That's a synergy, and we have been working together from the very beginning, and that's one of the reasons why when we set up the digital lab, it was in a context that from an e-governance perspective, we are going to make sure that is there, access to services are there, but at the same time, the constant training that has to happen, our Department of Youth Service will be able to send in youth officers in those at those digital labs to train people from the local communities as well, so that we could have somebody there permanently being able to provide service to the citizens in those communities.
Let me ask, in the process, you've launched a digital agenda. In your agenda, what's the first step towards this transformation? What will people be able to see and say, all right, we're now taking this step?
Right, I want Alexia to answer that question.
I think most people like to think the first step should be the technology, but our unit actually takes digital transformation starts with the people. So the first step that we're actually taking is to focus on the people. And in early January, we're going to be doing a lot of heavy campaigning, public awareness on the legislations, public awareness on the digital agenda, public awareness on the different systems that exist today, because that's what we've also found out. People might know and hear IRIS exists, but do we know how to use IRIS? Do we know who it applies to? And the same thing relies with BELAPS, OPAL. I mean, there's so many different systems in government that exist, but do we really know how to use them? So we're gonna start there in helping the citizens to really become more interactive and collaborate with us. But that's not to say that simultaneously we won't be working on systems. We will. Another first step for us is really having a comprehensive Government of Belize website. Where can citizens now go and find information on everything that relates to government, everything that relates to services, documentations, etc. Today, we have one that we must say is not comprehensive. So that's also our major first step in ensuring that we can have now a one government website that gives you all the information. And that government website will be updated consistently into it becoming the e-services portal. So those are like our main steps in trying to ensure that we're focusing on the people and not necessarily just jumping straight into the technology. And then we have various other projects, like the minister said, the digital inclusion project. It's a major highlight of the agenda that is slated to be completed by December of this year. So we're very ambitious, I might say, with our time frame. Well, we're moving as fast as we could.
Well, two things. One, there'll have to be a dictionary with all the acronyms. Because I don't know a few that you dropped there. But the other part, Minister, let's just have the blunt conversation. I think you started by saying you had to work with a limited budget. Moving to digital is expensive.
Definitely.
Some of the first world countries are allocating billions with a B towards implementing a digital strategy. We don't have that.
That's right.
So while your other ministers may be excited about the transition, how excited are they to give you the adequate share of the budget?
Well, that is a critical point there you made, Marlene, but I think the commitment comes from the Ministry of Finance and the Prime Minister himself, and through our ministry, to ensure that our ministry has the necessary budgetary support. But you also have to understand that every ministry has their own budget, and they too will have to contribute to this digital transformation. So while for example, Vital Statistics, the Attorney General Ministry is preparing their budget, in their budget must speak of what line item will be there for digital transformation. For example, how are we going to take Vital Statistics unit to the level we need it to go to make sure that it is digital. So in coordinating with our ministry, these are things that we have to look at. But I know when we looked at the entire plan, just the setting up, you're talking about millions of dollars. Could we get it overnight? No, it won't happen overnight. But we must be committed to ensure that it is done. And I think that is where I wanted to stress that we do have the commitment. And the commitment comes from the highest level, our Prime Minister, that we must invest the monies to ensure that our ministries, especially these key areas that we're talking about, and then leading up to the national ID that we want to develop, but that we have the resources necessary over the next 4 years to move Belize into a more digital economy and a digital government.
Is it realistic that within 4 years you'll be able to shift all government systems online? Or do you feel you'll only lay the framework?
Well, I won't say all government systems online. This is going to be a long-term process, but I think when you look at the key ones that we're talking about, Vital Statistics, land registry, the police record, again, we already have the company registry, and then the other one is the e-passport system or immigration system that they are already going to be launching sometime in July, I'm told. So, and then the last thing that we would really want is to have that national ID. Now, health, the Ministry of Health already has a database. They already have somewhat of a, so it's all about us now connecting and having these systems speaking to each other, which will form the basis of our national ID. So I can say that I believe, and I'm optimistic, Marlene, that we can achieve within the next 4 years these 5 major things. While there are 40 projects or many other smaller projects that we are going to be working simultaneously, but will also help citizens and in terms of improving their lives and access to better services. These are the 5 key things that I think that people want access to, want to see improved, and from there we build. You know, from there we build. I envision myself in, you know, that we want to ensure that within the next, then you look at the next 5 years thereafter, where are we going to go there? And then, so we come to build. Because remember now, technology changes every single day. And we have to keep up with that. And that's one reason why the unit was developed, because you have to support the system, you have to make sure that we're looking at every aspect of cybersecurity and all of these things that comes with it. But it starts with the commitment, it starts with the vision and the passion to want to make it happen. We need to, I don't want to leave government at some point. I don't know when that will be, but and when I look back, I say we did not achieve anything. I want to ensure that when we leave there, you can say, you know what, that's our mark. We made a major achievement for this country.
All right. And Alexis, you must have 100-person team behind you, right?
I think I imagine that sometimes. No, but I think as the minister said, you know, it's about trying to find and being more efficient, even as us as a team. So we have even begun to do our internal capacity building to become one of the government's first agile teams. That's something new even for government in the way we now try to develop systems, try to deploy those systems as fast as we could. So it's even a lot of capacity building for us internally in trying to be prepared to meet the expectations, in our case, not just of the citizens, but the expectations of government, because there is a lot of support as well that's necessary for our other government, our sister ministries.
I just have to say that I feel a certain level of confidence knowing that someone named Alexa leading us in this age of digital transformation, you know.
That's right.
Brings some confidence to me.
I might have to steal that one.
It's so ironic, right?
Alexa, what time is it? That's my favorite one.
Sometimes we joke with Alexia. We joke with Alexia in terms of these things. But you know, not because she is here with me, but I can tell you that I think we have the right people in place. You know, our CEO is very much into this thing as well, and you know, he comes from that background. You know, our director and the team at the governance unit, like I said, small team but very effective and efficient team. A team that is committed and driven to wanting to see this come to fruition. So, and as the leader of this team, I'm also passionate about technology and wanting to see betterment for this country and wanting to see that people have better access to services. I hate driving on Queen Street, seeing people sitting down on a sidewalk, waiting for a bird paper. You know,
waiting for their name to be shouted
you know,
across
so
the street.
It's crazy. We need to see a change of that very soon. So I am very much. I had to smile when you say that, Paul. But definitely that's something that is critical.
I was about to tease, Minister. Well, I'm already a step ahead. I'm already teleporting into videos.
Well, you know, we all know that this is a necessary step that has to be taken, and I do hear the plan that you have behind it. Definitely starting with the people and ensuring that everyone is on board and has the proper buy-in to move it forward. And whether people are resistant to the change, it's a change that has already been happening.
Yes.
We just need to catch up. So wishing you the best, and thank you so much for coming in and telling us about it.
Thank you very much
Thank you
for having us.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking about coping through the holidays. How do you not get overwhelmed? How do you not succumb to what can be a really tough time for people this time of year? That's what we're going to be talking about in a few. So please, stay tuned.